So hello everybody to this breakout session on the Smart Factory Web, the IDS-enabled platform economy. So that's the topic of this breakout session. We will deal with the IDS industrial community use case, Smart Factory Web, which is one particular aspect of the platform economy. I see that still participants are joining, so I will take this time to introduce here the hosts. Originally, it was planned that Liliana Stojanovic, my colleague at Fraunhofer IOSB, would host this meeting, but unfortunately she has fallen ill, and I think she's in the call, but she will not moderate this breakout session. And then we have Angelo Marguglio of engineering in Italy, Dr. Carsten Schweichert of the German Telecom, and Martin Kohlenstarch of the TNO. I was just informed that, okay, on this slide, maybe not all PhD titles are correctly mentioned. So sorry for this, and I ask the hosts not to distribute this, either remove all the titles or took them as they are really attached to the persons. So we are now 34 people, so I think we start because people may also want to go to lunch after that breakout session. So I ask the host, Martina, to start with the introductory presentation. Okay, so we already heard that, and if you followed the live stream this morning, then you have already seen this slide where I showed the relationship between the platform Industry 4.0 and the IDS-A. So this is what we are talking about in this community. We want to bring together platform Industry 4.0 concepts and visions with the concept of data sovereignty as dealt with in the IDS-A. And we are doing this based on use cases, and one of the use cases is the Smart Factory Web. There are some examples how to bring together concepts of the platform Industry 4.0, such as the asset administration shell and the connector of the IDS. You may have the situation that there is a physical asset, for example, a machine, a sensor, or a whole factory, and you take the technology of the IDS connector to communicate data from the asset into a data space, and you surround the IDS connector via the meta model approach of the asset administration shell, and then you are within an Industry 4.0 system. You have the IDS connector directly implemented together with the asset. And then you take the AAS approach somewhere else. So the AAS implementation may be somewhere stored in an edge system or in a cloud system. Or it's the other way around, that you already have an asset administration shell implementation that is associated with an asset, and you take then the technology of IDS and put it on top of that, and you enter into a data space using this type of relationship. So the same, or there are similar relationships between the AES Registry and the Ids Broker. So with the AES Registry, you have a means to register instances of asset administration shells, and the Ids Broker registers IDS connectors. So we also have to think about, if we want to bring both architectures together, what is the relationship here? Do we have both independent of each other? Is there a kind of interlinkage between both? or is an AS registry a part of an IDS broker? So these are still open questions that we have to deal with in the IDS industrial community. As I said already, there are two reference use cases that we want to consider. The first one is collaborative condition monitoring. You see it here again on this slide. You have components that are manufactured by a component supplier. So the components typically are deployed in a machine. So in a machine X here, you have maybe 3 components from 3 different suppliers. And then the machines are installed in the whole production plant. So there are several machines comprising a plant. So when you now want to do in the factory predictive maintenance or condition monitoring or whatever, you have to deal with how to share the data coming from the component, from the machine, and from the factory, who is allowed to use which type of data in order to offer these services. So the very interesting use case that is dealt with also in GAIA-X. And as I said this morning at our friends in Lemgo at the Smart Factory OWL, there will be in the deployment of this scenario in the next month, as it is a GAIA-X use case project. Also run forward by Fraunhofer IOSB, there is the Smart Factory Web, which is a realization of the idea of platform economy, similar to Booking.com or Uber and so on. In the industrial production environment, there are more and more software enabled marketplaces that mediate between a requester and an offering of production capabilities. This is, of course, a chance, but there are also risks because as a factory owner, you have to give out data to this marketplace in order that you are found from a user side. But you do not want that maybe your sensible production scheduling data or capability data is also seen by other factories, which may be your competitors. So to some extent, you have to give out the data, but you do want to control the use of this data for the requester. There are several levels maybe of data usability and visibility depending on the trust level between the factory and the user. If they know already each other, maybe they even have a contract between, or if they are unknown before they are interconnected by the platform. So all these questions are very interesting, and they are handled by this use case Smart Factory Web. And we also have a running system there that may be of interest to you. Just go to smartfactoryweb.eu. In the IDS industrial community, we are also dealing with other use cases such as multi-enterprise supply chain business networks. We see more and more that this connected world, as it is termed in the reference architecture model Industry 4.0, is getting more and more interesting and relevant because you need resilient supply chains and you need sustainable supply chains. So I skip now the following slide because we want to come to the inclusion of the audience here. And in order to spare some time, we directly do this. So we are now 43 participants, and we would like to know a little bit more about the audience here. So we have sketched a poll. And we would like to ask you, what kind of organization do you represent? So just please click on these colored squares. I wait a little bit until we have enough answers. Okay, quite interesting. With a lot of representatives from university and research organization, it seems, manufacturing industry, and ICT providers. So it seems that, okay, the poll seems to come to an end. So thank you very much. We go to the next one. Okay, next question is, okay, which of these application scenarios, some of them we mentioned in the introductory slides, is the most relevant for you? So please click, is it collaborative condition monitoring? Is it the platform economy, this smart factory web marketplace? Resilient supply chain networks would be the green square, or is it direct collaboration with selected partners, or any other application scenario? Okay, so it's very interesting to see that there is no clear preference, it seems so. Okay. So thank you very much. Okay, we have quite an equal share between all the application scenarios. And we go to the next one. Next question. Okay, have you already integrated the IDS components with your systems? So this relates to your experience with IDS. If you have no experience, click on the blue, dark blue square. No, but it's under consideration would be the light blue. Yes, I have already used the open source software, would be the green square. Even if you may already have an own implementation of a basic connector. Okay, this is of course not so common. Okay, so you are either not aware about IDS technology or it is under consideration. So this means that an event like today is very important to bring this idea of data sovereignty based on the international data spaces to you. And as I said already, this IDS industrial community is still an open community. Up to now, we have around 80 participants. And if you want to participate, you are invited to do so. So we come to the next one. Which security requirements do you consider most important? Is it the classical data access control? Who may access which type of data under which conditions? Or is it data usage control? That means once you have given out the right to access to the data, do you want also to maintain the usage control about the data? Or is it C, data provenance tracking, which is the third major security requirement? That is, you want to see where is data coming from, and what was the motivation to create it, who is owning the data. This would be data provenance tracking. Okay, so usage control seem to be most interest. Of course, it relies upon access control. Without access control, you cannot do usage control. Okay, thank you. Then the next poll. Have you already used the asset administration shell, the AAS of Industry 4.0, this concept or as a metadata concept around an asset, which is also called a digital twin of the asset? No, but this is under consideration. Yes, we know it. Okay, I think Platform Industry 4.0 has to do something about making this concept known to this community. Okay, the type 2 is the AES as a service, typical client-server request or publish-subscribe request. Okay, but the loose coupling by means of the document exchange, which would be type 1, is not yet known, and also the Industry 4.0 language based on state machines and protocols based on this. Okay, and we take another question. What are the key barriers to realize the above-mentioned scenarios? Is it more on the technical, organizational, sociological, or regulatory dimension? Is there a lack of standards, lack of knowledge, lack of open source solutions, lack of technical infrastructures, lack of incentives to share data, or anything else? Okay, so it's quite interesting to see that lack of knowledge is a key barrier, but also lack of incentives. Okay, so this is not yet in the community or on the market that you have benefit in doing this. Okay, quite interesting. And I think there is a last one, if I... Okay, what would be the most urgent issue to tackle in order to realize above-mentioned scenarios? Okay, A, definition of common standards. B, open source implementation for relevant standards. So please click. Federation of existing initiatives, or is it D, knowledge, experience sharing? Change of mindset. Or F, incentives to start, or anything else? Okay, so knowledge sharing is very urgent, experience sharing, and also change of mindset. So this is more than half of the results. Okay, very interesting. Thank you very much, Martina, for these poll possibilities. I think we will make the results available to everybody here in this breakout session. And we come now to our panelist. And I'm very happy here to introduce our panelists. We have here Carsten Schweichert of the German Telekom. We have Angelo Marguglio of engineering, and there is Martin Kullenstad of the TNO. Okay, welcome to this panel. And okay, I would like to give you now the opportunity to make a short introduction of yourself and you give your short presentation, and then we will have some discussion with the audience or with me, depending on the feedback of the audience. So, Angelo, please start you.
Yes, hello everyone, thanks Thomas. I'm Angelo Marguglio, I'm the Smart Industry and Agri unit within Engineering Informatica. This is an Italian system integrator. I've also prepared some supporting slide. I don't know if I can check by myself. So, okay. 15. Yeah. And I will spend a few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, just to introduce on a project that is going to start next week, indeed. That is the Eureka project. That is an European approach to provide repurposing capability services, protocols, and so on as a response to this pandemic situation. Obviously, also some of the building blocks will be based on IDS standards. So obviously, all of us are aware that this pandemic is impacting a lot the manufacturing sectors. There are some estimations say that we are about 2 or 4 trillions of global economic impact, but on the other side, on the human path, this is an accountable impact that we are seeing. But it's for sure that now it's time for action. Indeed, I would say both the European Commission, but also a lot of organizations around the world, like the World Manufacturing Forum, is pushing us to take opportunity of this pandemic situation in order to reconsider how the way to make business, how the way to digitalize our supply chain, and so on. So in this respect, the European Commission has launched last, I would say, June or May, something like that, a set of actions that are trying to tackle all the difficulties around the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of them is the manufacturing demand peak management for production of medical equipment and supplies. And in respect, we propose these initiatives, the EURECA project, and has been funded, and as mentioned, we will start on the 1st December. I will spend a few more words on some of the concept behind this project, but it's important to say that obviously we are not alone. I mean, we have a lot of digital manufacturing platform, commercial platform already available, and we have selected some champions from this market as part of the consortium. We have a lot of expertise and protocols in terms of repurposing and also manufacturing repurposing pilots, obviously to validate our solutions, since one of the challenge is to shorten the ramp-up phase at only 48 hours to start reconfiguring your manufacturing processes. We can also rely on global networks for advanced manufacturing, and some of them are also connected to the IDS ecosystem. And we can also support, we can be supported by a lot of group of interest that are supporting us in terms of defining the right way to provide these repurposing capabilities. We have tried to build our action on top of 5 main dimensions. So how to coordinate the different global manufacturing capacities, and then how we can plan and react in terms of manufacturing response. So absolutely we fall in the on-demand and manufacturing as a service production. So you absolutely align with the introduction that Thomas made before the pool. Then we have to support dynamic and flexible management of the supply chain, especially when we have to move toward local supply chain. And we have a lot of, I would say, stuff to do with data sharing, IoT, data quality, IPR protection when we share this data along the different manufacturing assets and so on. And finally, we have a continuous digital transformation and digital continuity on both the production side, but also on the customer side that has to be fulfilled. And we have to follow qualification certification criteria to be sure that all our components will run as planned. So try to be in some way pragmatic in terms of needs and opportunities that we see on developing this action, especially in this very specific period of time. I mean, we have some needs coming from, I would say, more on a policy perspective, coming from we have to change our mind. When we have to change the framework where we are running our business, there are a lot of trend restriction or complexity in managing, I would say, the usual supply chain. So we have to change our approach toward the local and flexible policies. And we have to rely and to enhance the digital skill and capacities of the different actors and stakeholders in the value chain. So this in some way open up to opportunities, so we can change and push ourselves behind our limits, and we are to increase our coordination capability. So the coordination network at policy, local, but also at business level, and something that will be broadening in order to support this step change. Also, from a technical perspective, we are now seeing how we have new emerging needs, like a better support toward the digital customer journey. For instance, the fashion industry in Italy is exploiting in this sense. We need further ecosystem and collaboration models, also thanks to the clusterings that can all really help these collaboration models in terms of technical and business models. But as mentioned, we have new opportunities. We can create a new local supply chain. We can create new activities to support this shared value innovation, and we can rely on the emerging concept of manufacturing data space and how Industry 4.0 and artificial intelligence has already proved in the first wave of the pandemic situation how they can help in remote monitoring, in repurpose the processes and so on. So we have a really an opportunistic approach also to the technical offering. So we, as mentioned, we are building on top of a lot of existing good results in terms of technologies, platform, and processes. Some of them are IDS, GAIA-X, the connections over the connected supply networks, Smart Factory Web for managing the on-demand and marketplace side of the platform, and so on. So, as mentioned, a lot of good results that can be further improved if we put all these ingredients together, which are the main ingredient that we want to manage is the safety condition. So, I mean, all the specification and protocol coming in some way from the demand side, so from the medical aspects. We have some specific needs on how to repurpose our productions. We have a lot of existing platform and processes for repurposing, design, platform, manage digital twins, how to manage the different process and manufacturing assets in terms of repurposing. And then we have to enrich also the way we interact with the shop floor to implement all of this stuff. And that's it. I will try to be brief, but obviously there are more and more things to do and more to come.
Okay, thank you very much, Angelo. We are looking forward to this project that will start next week. Yes, a lot of the technologies that have been discussed today will be integrated in your project and will come together in order to solve this very important problem. So thank you very much. I will now come to Martin Kullenstarch of TNO and ask you to also say some words about you and what is your main message to the audience.
Yes, thank you, Thomas. While we're waiting for the slides, I can quickly introduce myself. I'm Matt Koolstad. I'm working now for the last 2 years at TNO as data sovereignty architect and software engineer. And as the TNO is an applied research organization, we try to bridge the gap between fundamental research and businesses. And what we did in the last years is trying to get some kind of generic infrastructure to share data, not only for specific domains, or not only for smart industry, but also in other domains, and try to keep the same basic infrastructure in place. So what we now have in the last years is some different data spaces we created. So for Industry 4.0, for smart logistics, an AI health data space, and also a couple of others that we'll not go into deeply today. But if we see what happens in Industry 4.0, where we did especially look at the smart connected supply network, where manufacturers in the Eindhoven region in the Netherlands are exchanging supply chain information, so orders, dispatch advice, all kinds of messages related to the supply chain. And what we see there is that to get it all started, it's very important to start with a scope demonstrator, to show actually the companies to what the real value is of such an ecosystem. And so when starting small, you can easily explain what you're doing. On the other hand, it's also very important to invest in this in the future business models of companies, because right now companies might have a data lake approach, and they have their data at their own location, and they monetize this data. But what happens when this whole ecosystem of sharing data becomes more generic? And we try to help these companies to sort of adopt to these new standards. So for the smart connected supply network, we use the four-corner model, where manufacturing companies are connected via service providers to the ecosystem, and where each service provider can communicate with all the other service providers without roaming fees. So the messages are exchanged freely, and then the service providers and the manufacturing companies will actually create new business models to actually improve their business with, for instance, new analytics on their data. That becomes very important. And in this in the Industry 4.0, we have several projects running. So the Smart Explier I already mentioned, but also the Brainport Industry Campus in Eindhoven is a very promising idea where a lot of companies are based on in the same factory floor, and they can communicate easily in this ecosystem. And then I also want to look at different kinds of the different kinds of data spaces, because I think in the end it becomes very important to have a global infrastructure, not only for smart industry but also for the other environments. And that's where we in the smart logistics field in the Netherlands we're looking at. We saw that having this same language is very important. So we saw that with the Smart Supply Network, we saw that with, for instance, the AAS as administration shell, but also in the Netherlands, for instance, with the Open Trip model to exchange information about logistic trips in an ecosystem. And for that, the semantics are key. It's critical to speak the same language. And another very promising part is the new AI health data spaces in the Netherlands, where we want to accelerate AI in hospitals and in research at hospitals. And of course, it's very important here to have all the identification, authentication, authorization, usage control. All those aspects are very important because it's highly sensitive information you might share. But you also see here that it's very interesting to see new kinds of AI popping up. You have the data to the algorithm part, which is more the traditional one, where one party will receive all the information and then trains a model on this. But algorithm to the data is very promising to actually have the data reside at the hospitals themselves, which all hospitals train a local model, and then a overarching model of all these local models is created to actually have a very nice representation of the data. And especially in the health sector, you have often relatively small data sets. So for instance, in the COVID situation, each hospital doesn't have that much patients with COVID, but in the whole of the Netherlands, this information is much larger. And then if you can train this model on this larger set, this becomes very promising. And here you also see that quickly shifting is very important. So actually we had a demonstrator where we exchanged COVID electronic case report forms in an easy way to actually see what's happening. So,
okay. Yeah, thank you, Martin, for giving your view upon the situation around data spaces and what could be done with them. Okay, before we come to a discussion between you, I want to hand over to Carsten Schweichert. Carsten, please say some words about you. We know each other quite a long time from Platform Industry 4.0 and other opportunities, but you also have already a product in the German telecom on IDS technology, isn't it?
Well, yes, indeed. This is Carsten from Deutsche Telekom. It stays Deutsch even in English. Yes, I am not here for 5G today, so sorry for disappointing you, and not for the Corona app. Sorry for this as well. But my mission and my task in Deutsche Telekom is to care about data economy, because we in Deutsche Telekom believe that, like most of you, I think, that there is a big value in using data for the complete economy and for every business, for every digitized business as well. And well, you know, every business today is or will be digitized to some extent. So we are engaged in the platform Industry 4.0. Yes, we are, and member of International Data Space as well. And my special focus is data usage and data economy in the industry and logistics environment. So fits perfectly to the focus here on smart factories. And yes, Thomas, we already launched a product based on the IDS architecture with a connector, with a broker capability implemented. The name is Telecom Data Intelligence Hub, and one of the core functions is being a data broker. There are some services in extent like a commercial marketplace on open data marketplace and an AI workbench where it's possible to apply data in a usage controlled environment. But the example I will give here in this few minutes is the data brokerage, which is in there, because we had the opportunity with some early adopters to make some first experiences about it and what works and what works not and what is of benefit. And so it's based on the data sovereignty assumptions on the IDS. I said it, and it is so. Where is it needed, or where's the demand for it? I'll give you the example of the VDMA, the German Machine Association, who asked us to be the data intermediary in their UMATI approach. So this means cross-manufacturing standard to exchange machine data, to make machine data available across the manufacturers. It's based on UPC-UA, of course, and attach the UMATI script to it to make it a UPC-UA companion specification. But in the demonstrator, the USP on it, or the special approach, is that all manufacturers worldwide could connect their machines to it. And we are the supplier with our IDS-based broker, routing these machine data from the source to the destination, for example, dashboards or other data users. So we connect as a data intermediary, the data broker, the machine data provider, and the machine data consumer, and with all the controls which are ordered so far and which will be possible by the capabilities defined by the IDSA. Why is this important? This is important because our experience before was that a machine data manufacturer or a machine operator was not ready to share the data because the fear was, I don't know what happens to it. So the demand of control to have the data sovereignty applied to it is out there, and this is important to arise. This should be my last sentence, and this is the key goal of it, to arise data availability of valuable data. So not only open data, which nobody cares, but valuable data, which from out of production operations, and to be ready to share it, for example, in such use cases like collaborative condition monitoring, collaborative quality management, collaborative something. And the second benefit out of it is if you are going to apply AI to something, you need more data than you have yourself. So you need valuable data availability, and the only way is to share it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Carsten. Thanks to everybody. Now, I would ask the audience to pose your questions by using the chat function. And we will then repeat the question and ask the panelists. So either pose a question to all of them or just to one panelist individually. In the meantime, I have one question. What concerned me when looking at the poll results, there was a question on barriers, and the result was that there are still not enough incentives to share data. And Carsten, you distinguish between open data and valuable data. Maybe this is one of the reasons that we have to think about what is the incentive to share valuable data. So what could be the reason for this? Who wants to give some opinion about this? So just raise your hand or take the hand raising function. So Carsten, please.
If I'm running a factory with machine production, I have tons and gigatons of data around me about the running machines. So what to do with it? If I need benefits for myself, going to share it, to have the effort to share it, a little effort to share it, and I need benefits. So I can sell it for money, for example, if somebody pays, or I can exchange it to get some data back where I have benefits from. We have to find out and to point out the use cases, which are the benefits use cases out of it. And there are new use cases, so new kind of business. And so this is the innovation task in it.
So, yes, if it is a problem to find the benefits, is it a hen and egg problem, Martin or Angelo? So do we first need something that is installed and you can see somebody is making money out of that and then others are following, or what is the reason of lacking incentives?
Yeah, what's interesting, what we saw in the Smart Connect Supply Network is that you actually, at first, you want to do planning in your own factory. So you want to make sure your own planning is optimized. But if you then say, what happens when you, for instance, want to buy a product you need for your own supply chain? And what if you can get more information on that and include that in your own planning? That those things might not be the parts that a factory at this moment is thinking about. So having what I said, a small demonstrator by showing what you can do with this, that helps a lot to actually help also these factories to actually see the value in their data.
Okay. I would add,
Angelo?
I would add probably another perspective. I mean, the incentives should be only from an economic perspective. So obviously in that case, I would say monetization of the data trading is something that could help. So we can feel in some way that you can make it a problem. But what I think that can really in some way overcome these barriers is to try to change the business that can be impacted by this kind of things. So especially when you have a lot of recurring connection, dynamic connection that you have to comply with, is easier if you have a standardized way to exchange data. So it's not the monetization of the data exchange, but the way you exchange data that can help you to make, I would say, the principle of connect one and share with everyone. So it will be easier to create this dynamic connection so you can improve your business, or you can ease your business if you are able to exchange data on a standardized way.
Okay, thank you. Carsten, please wait a little bit because there are questions from the audience, and maybe you can take that up again. I just now share the chat. So there was one question, another question. How can IDS help to bring the data ownership and its economical values to the end consumers who own/generate data? The question of M. Karami. Who wants to answer to that? So, Carsten, please.
Good news or bad news, you decide, is there is now data ownership from a legal perspective. But you can identify who controls the data, who creates it. Is it your car? Do you control the car of your data? Good question. Or is it your machine? And so the kind of ownership feeling you can get if you stay in the control of the controlled data by you. And IDS does help with data sovereignty approaches, including this morning mentioned by Claudia Eckert, usage control capabilities. This is a way to stay in control. So data sovereignty services by international data space is a way to stay step by step more and more in control of the data you want to you have control on, to stay in it.
Okay, that's an interesting statement that you say that there is no data ownership from a legal perspective.
This is the result of Platform Industry 4.0 legal working group, and there's a paper on it. You can download it on Platform Industry 4.0 website.
Okay, is it a lack of laws, or is it by principle that there cannot be a data ownership?
Should I say it?
Yes.
The current laws let it open.
Okay.
So there are laws on IP and so stuff, but applied to data, the current laws let it open, and lot of industry participants or the industry likes that it's open, because if it's open, you have the chance in different business models to to organize it by contracts or by AGBs or whatever. So not having a law is sometimes good, because you have more flexibility in applying and doing something about it.
Okay. Another question by Tobias Baumann. How do you control the further usage of the data after being sold via the broker? So you mean probably after it has left the data space? Within the data space, yes, there is usage control using the connector technology, but after it has left the data space, is there still some control? Who wants to answer on that?
I mean, there are several, I think, concepts from the reference architecture and also implementation that can create this support on the user's control. I mean, it's not only, probably it's not always the truth that the data can exit the data space. So obviously there are a lot of mechanisms within IDS that can support you on assure that your component, your system, if certified, will not let data go out from the data space. So in some way, also the data ownership probably should be, I would say, changing the wording. So we should talk about data control ownership. So we are not leaving the data out of our boundaries of our organization, but we are just giving, in some way, sharing access to the data to someone else, to some other application and services, but just keeping the control over this data. So it's not just a piece of file that is sent to another PC, but we are still the one that is controlling who can access that file or what can be done on that file. So it's still, until obviously the file is controlled by IDS connectors, so we can rely on this and several, obviously, trust and management security framework of the IDSA.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question to Martin. So you have a lot of experience with several application domains in TNO in your research there. So what do you think, which application domain has the most demand for data sovereignty, for IDS compliant solutions? Where do you see the fruits that can be easily taken and earned?
I think there will be two answers. I think which sector will have the most benefit will probably be the health sector, because there you have the privacy sensitive data, which is very complicated. But that also is not an easy sector to actually start with. If you look at the smart industry, it's much clearer. You have certain companies that already have a relationship with each other, and if then sharing data with each other via an IDS, that makes it easier. If you say, for instance, in the health sector, you have citizens or patients in a hospital that might want to have something to say about their data, what happens with their data. But this person is not in direct contact with the researcher that analyzes the data, and there it becomes more difficult. And in smart industry, this relationship is much clearer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, coming back to the title of this breakout session, if you say this relationship is much clearer, smart factory web and platform economy. What do you think about this trend that maybe the relationships between the suppliers and the users are getting much more flexible and need more flexibility due to more risks in the overall supply chains? Is there a need? Is there a demand? What are the chances and risks for such a platform as it is experimented by the Smart Factory Web system? A question to all of you, and then we close this session. So who wants to start?
Yeah. So from the point I made before, I think indeed the relationship right now is quite easy. So I buy in something from another party. If this becomes more a marketplace, this will become much more difficult also to handle. There's not some administrator that sees, oh, I'm doing business with all these parties. So having this system in place that you can have it more automated, have clear rules available to actually share data, that will help very much. But still, when you will sort of retrieve something from the data space, you will create some kind of contract between the two parties, and that's where this line becomes a little bit clearer.
Okay, so you think we have, of course, link the idea of data sharing with the idea of smart contracts.
Yeah.
Okay, Angelo, what is your perspective?
Probably not only to smart contracts, but in general, checking implementation of the technical contracts to be attached to these, I would say, policy and users controls. So in some ways, a step change also in our mind. I mean, moved from a legal agreements to our technical agreements, and then, as you know, I mean, having several solutions. And probably I want to raise another point that we should really help providing open source solution that so the new I would say new organization that want to join these trusted networks can make a decision, make or buy, as usual. So they can rely on existing connector and existing solution and platform already certified that can help implementing these technical contracts and put in reality in their business, or they develop around, and then we will have, I think, a lot of initiatives in order to support this training and then towards them. So I think that the management of technical agreements and availability of open source or commercial solution to be bought by a new organization who want to join, and a bunch of resources and services to support the creation of a new connectors or other enablers is something that has to be streamlined in order to ease this process.
Okay, thank you. And Carsten, your final statement.
If you're going to use data, shared data, if it's open data or not open data or monetized data, if you're going to use it today, you already have to agree to a contract, to a license contract, and every open data you have to agree to the open data license. If you buy data, of course, you make a contract on it. So using sharing and using shared data requires today already to agree to a contract. If you need to digitize this and make it an automated contract, if you a kind of self-service and data sharing from machine to machine, I need your data, will arise. I cannot see this at the moment, but I think it will go in this direction, and you need some more formalized and contracts, of course.
Okay. So thank you very much for your answers and for the participation to this breakout session and to the panel. I would like to finish by giving you, sorry, do I see now? It doesn't work. Okay, no, sorry. Yes, the IDS industrial community is not closed. You can still join this community without getting member already of the IDS association. Fraunhofer IOSB is running this community together with SIG AG, who was already present this morning in the introductory talk. So please join us by just contacting me or sending an email, register IDS-I to info@internationaldataSpaces.org, or looking at the IDSA webpage. You also find information about that. Thank you very much for this discussion and for your interest in IDS and the IDS industrial community. I think you will get all the presentations via the organizers. And if you still have questions, just contact the panelists and the presenters individually. Have a nice day. Have nice Christmas, we can already say, despite the restrictions and the constraints. And see you again in some other event later on. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Thomas. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Share your data.
And finally, I also want to thank Friedrich Volz, my colleague, for giving answers to questions in the chat. This was very helpful. Thank you.